All right, we are officially live, and I am joined here with my friend Kelly McGill, former Stanwood City Council member. So, Kelly, we talked to each other and decided we were going to get together and talk a little bit about the local elections, the elections that we've got going on in the governor's race in LD10, the Island County Commissioners, because right now Stanwood doesn't have too many elections going on or any. And then we'll touch on the initiatives a little bit. So let me ask you, one, how are you doing?
I'm well, Richard. Thank you. Yeah, we've been talking about doing this for months, so you've convinced me at this point. So I'm all yours. I guess it's timely given that we have an election that's right around the corner. So I won't pretend to be as impressive or informative as some of your other guests, especially the elected ones. But I will endeavor to do my best.
Well, that's all right. So one of the let's start small. We've
Okay.
got well, I mean, it's not small for here, but in Island County, we've got two commissioner races going on. We've got and let me know if you know them or know of them. We've got a three-way race in District 1, which is Marie Shimada and Damian Green, a write-in candidate, running against the incumbent Melanie Bacon. Do you know any of them? Do you have
I
any?
don't. I
Okay,
don't know.
well,
I live in Snohomish County, so
yeah.
I haven't paid a lot of attention to the Island County races other than to watch the
Then
constant
we'll
drama
skip those
unfold
and
on
go
the Island
straight to
County
LD10.
Republican Facebook page, which is always fun. But no, I can't claim to know anything about what's going on
All
in
right.
any of those races.
Well, that's all right. Then we'll skip those and we'll jump right over to LD10 because you have no excuse
Okay,
for that because you live in LD10. So,
I do, and
so
there
we'll
you're
start with
sure. I got opinions about that, so go ahead.
yeah. So we'll start with the House races. So we've
Yeah.
got in position one, we've got Clyde Shavers, the incumbent, running against Kerry Kennedy. So, one, I'll ask you, what do you think about that race, and what is your prediction in that race?
Okay. Well, I will say of all the folks running on the ballot writ large, Clyde Shavers is the one I'm most endorsing of. He is a highly accessible state legislator. He is a very, very kind and intelligent person. He is going to dominate that race. There's no way Kerry Kennedy, if she gets more than 40%, I'll be shocked. And if more than 45%, then I'll buy you lunch. I just,
Well, you know, and
he
some
has been
people.
so strong in that position.
So
Go ahead.
now, some people said the same thing when she was running against Yvonne for the primary, and she shocked the world. She didn't just win; she crushed Yvonne. So why do you think
Okay.
that was? And
No
is
clue.
that something that
I'm going to guess
makes you
the Island County Republican Party may have had something to do with her rise. I think she's more lean with her. She has more MAGA leanings, which is super impressive to some people in that voting pool. But that's going to run short of gas come the general election. And this is somebody who you'll have to remind me of the number, but came in I think it's single digits when she ran against Rick Larson. So I don't view her as a threat whatsoever to Clyde at all. I'm sure
Okay.
completely decent and nice person, but I'm going to hold my prediction. She won't touch 45%.
Okay, so position one, you are going Clyde Shavers. I'm writing them down because if you get
Okay.
one wrong, I'm
Thank you.
going to make fun of you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm glad you are. I don't want to forget. I know
Yeah.
you won't let me.
No. So position two, we've got Gary Ray running against Dave Paul. Now, Dave Paul, when he got elected, he ran against another pretty popular guy named Dave Hayes when he first won his election, and that was a close race.
I remember that.
Ever since
It
then,
was. I remember.
yeah, ever since then, the races have gotten less close.
Mhm.
So he's been pulling away. So do you think that he's going to continue to pull away, or do you think Gary Ray is going to catch up?
I don't think Gary Ray is going to catch up. I think Dave Paul's another example of someone who's pretty accessible and does a decent job. Um, I don't think the margin will be as big as it is with Clyde and Kerry, but I do think it'll be more than the margin of error for sure. So I think he'll win easily by 5 points or more.
Yeah. So if now you just raised an interesting point. So you're going to go with Dave Paul. So Democrats retain their House seats in LD10.
100%.
And let me ask you this question: If Clyde Shavers, who's relatively new to the political scene, if he gets more votes than Dave Paul, how much smack do you think he's going to talk to Dave Paul at the end of that election?
I don't know. I don't know the interpersonal dynamic between the two. I don't know if they co-legislate well or not. I am not certain. It would be a little interesting for the junior state rep to have a wider margin, but again, I put that more on what the opponents look like than I do the incumbents. So
yeah. So all right. So you've got Clyde Shavers and Dave Paul winning re-election. So now we've got, and this is the one that's considered by everyone to be the closest, and you could tell just by the money that's been poured into it.
Oh, what the fuck!
Unbelievable amounts of money that you can't even imagine.
And
so
TV advertising and internet advertising and everything else, dark money advertising. I'm shocked the amount of interest there is in a state senator race in LD10 in Washington State. I'm shocked by the amount of money flowing in it.
Yeah,
and it's not the two candidates. What's interesting is Ron and Janet, when they put out their own mailers, they're fairly pragmatic. They're not super negative. Right. Those ads are okay. They send far too many of them, but the ads that are coming from unaffiliated third parties, not authorized by any candidate, they have that disclaimer, are just like, holy shit. And it's painful to read some of the stuff about both candidates that when you get that sort of thing, you just kind of chuck it. It's just a waste of paper, a death of too many trees and whatnot else. So First of all, the first thing I'll say about that race is it's just alarming how much money is being wasted on it. I don't quite understand why. And then you have two pretty decent people running against each other. Janet is somebody I really like. I've know her politically. I've known her to a minimal extent professionally. And Ron appears to be a very centrist state senator, which appeals to me as well. So on this race, I don't have a clear prediction. I do think I'm leaning towards a Democratic sweep in the LD10 because I think the numbers trend that way. I think the primary supports that, but neither would surprise me. So you can write down my prediction that Janet's going to win, but I think it's going to be by a point or two.
Yeah, I think that could potentially be a race where they queue ballots. Like it's going to come down to who queues the most ballots. All right, so that covers LD10. Your prediction is a Democrat sweep. I agree with you that Senate race is going to be crazy close. It could go either way. So it's definitely the one that people will be keeping an eye on. And I think the reason that so much dark money is going into it is because Democrats are very, very close to having a super majority, which means they can do just about anything without the Republicans even slowing them down.
So the purple districts get targeted with more of this sort of out of bounds money.
Yeah, so any place where they think a Republican can retain, the Republicans are dumping money. Any places the Democrats see a weakness, they're dumping money. And Ramazal's seat is number one on both their radars. So
wow.
Yeah,
stakes are high.
They're dumping everything. They are high. In Washington State, I think we've got about, just between you and me and everybody,
everyone who's watching.
I think we've got two races that are even competitive now. And by competitive, I mean that there's even a prayer. Okay. So, and those races are Dave Reichert for governor against Bob Ferguson. I think there's a chance for Dave Reichert, although it's looking heavily in favor of Bob. And then the other one is Commissioner of Public Lands, where Jamie Herrera Butler, I think, might actually win against Dave Upthegrove. She's getting endorsements that Republicans don't usually get, like the Seattle Times and the Everett Herald. And I think she's got more name recognition due to her fact she's been in Congress for years before she ran for this. And
that's not the only reason she has name recognition. You and I know why she has a lot of name
recognition. And she has appealed to some Democrats because she was one of the Republicans that to impeach Trump, one of the 10.
One of 10 who actually had the courage to do the right thing. Amazing.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, but she got.
That's okay. You don't have to agree, but it's definitely how I feel.
The only reason that the reason I say that is because he wasn't in office anymore. So I felt like this was just further creating a divide at the worst possible time when we should have been just trying to unite the country around the new reality of the new president.
Just be thankful he was gone. And
right. That was my thinking. It's just, I mean, and it was, it cost her seat.
It did cost her seat, and it was impressive to me that she had the willingness to do what was right in that circumstance. And it wasn't perfect how that those impeachment articles came about, but I do think she did the right thing. That's just my opinion. But as to this I would agree with you that those are the two statewide offices that are competitive. So as to the Reichert and Ferguson race, I'm a little disappointed, to be honest with you. Bob Ferguson is someone who appears to me to be more left than Jay Inslee, and Jay Inslee did a pretty damn good job being liberal. Super nice guy, by the way. Actually, I've had the pleasure to meet Jay Inslee a couple of times. He's a very nice person. His policies for me were too liberal. So then it's like, okay, do we consider a Republican in a state and try to move the needle a little bit closer to the center? And Dave Reichert would be someone who would appeal to that, would appeal to a person like me. When I lived in the 8th Congressional District and he was congressman, he would more often than some of his peers, vote in alignment with Obama. I mean, he would very closely vote with the Republican caucus most of the time, but he had a few things that stuck out and it pissed the Republicans off. And, again, he would vote with conscience and in some matters. So it's like, okay, this is somebody who's a little more centrist minded. He certainly was instrumental in catching the Green River Killer, as name recognition. Doesn't come out hard on social issues that aren't important in the state. It doesn't matter how we feel about abortion in the state because it's never going away. So I don't understand why people get so upset about it. I do understand why, but here's two guys talking about this. So we're going to sound ridiculous, but in this state, it's not going away. Gay rights are not going away. So Dave Reichert has done a good job at least until recently, straying from those topics because they're not important as far as what really matters and can be changed. Where he's disappointed me recently is, especially when he's running against Semi-Bird, Dave Reichert should have run this whole campaign about the middle or even appealing to the left. But he, in some of his events, some of the things that he got caught recorded on, was constantly appealing to the right. And I don't understand why. The Republicans not going to win a statewide office in Washington state without appealing to moderates and Democrats. So forget the right fringe. He never is going to have those votes anyways. He'd be lucky if the people who voted for Semi-Bird come out to vote for him. Some will, some won't. They'll just leave it blank. I don't think they're going to vote for Bob Ferguson, but I think a lot of them will leave it blank. So I don't know why he invested in that crowd at all. Semi-Bird was never a threat whatsoever. So I'm disappointed that Dave Reichert didn't spend more time appealing to voters like me, more public ads, more open forums, and spent way too much time at private GOP gatherings talking about hats that are signed by Trump or, Trump calls me the sheriff or blah, blah, blah. None of that impressed me. So in this case, I do think Bob Ferguson is going to win. I think it's going to be by probably 7 or 8 points, which would still be a pretty decent showing for a statewide office for the GOP. But I don't think he's going to win. And I think he where he failed was not appealing enough to the middle and to do Democratic.
And unfortunately, the Semi-Bird campaign, and you're right, it never really took off. It never had a chance. It was only popular in the Republican echo chamber. And the reason it became such a big deal is because the state GOP made this silly decision that we are going to start doing endorsements early without input from the people of who it is that we want to stay in, and then said we hope that the other person drops out and supports our endorsed candidate. Well, Semi-Bird understood the inner workings of the local GOPs because he's currently the chairman of Benton County, and he was the chairman of Benton County at the time, to which I have heard very mixed reviews because he was too busy trying to focus on himself. But that's not what we're talking about. But he
does Benton County even have 10,000 voters? I mean, this is irrelevant. I don't understand. I don't get it.
He didn't even win his own county. So
I think he was. I think this whole time, Semi Bird was running for Jim Walsh's position within the state GOP caucus. That's my
well,
opinion.
he says he's not. So it doesn't.
I think he's not telling the truth.
Well, wouldn't be the first
It
time.
would be the first time, right?
So, but yeah, no. Unfortunately, the state GOP endorsed Semi Bird. So then there was a risk, right, for that Republicans who, and let's be honest, Republicans, Democrats, both parties sometimes have people who do not pay attention. They don't pay attention to what's
No
going
way.
on.
Seriously?
And so, yeah, they might just look, oh, well, my party endorsed this guy, so I'm going to vote for this guy. And so the
What a great way to vote.
the concern was if he doesn't appeal to the right at all, he's in danger of not even showing up on the ballot. But you're right, Republicans axe themselves. We had a perfectly
and they
good
constantly
candidate.
They're amazing at self-sabotage. They pick
And-
people who are. This is a state that votes solidly blue. So why in the world would you even think you would win with someone like Lauren Culp or Semi Bird? And Lauren Culp was a far better candidate, by the way, a far better run campaign.
Better.
However, he was never going to win with his opinions. He's so far right. How would that work in a state that votes so far blue? It defeats common sense. And you watch people online saying that votes were stolen or the election was a scam or whatever. It's like, no, you just brought someone in who is so far right wing. They didn't have a chance out of the gate. All they did was reinforce your echo chamber of your opinions, and you like that. And I wish, if they're being honest, they would just admit that.
Yeah, and so you yourself, you voted for both Republicans and Democrats, which is why I wanted to have you on, because you are one of those middle road voters in Washington that need to be won by Republicans if they want to win. And
yeah,
we are doing a very good job of one thing that Republicans have done in this state, and I've noticed it because I've been inside the party. One thing that they have done is they've done a very good job of putting themselves in an echo chamber where and then since they're in that echo chamber, they assume absolutely everybody agrees with them. And so they just don't understand. How could we have possibly lost this race? Everyone agrees with me. This is a stolen election. Well, you've got to get out of your echo chamber and talk to people who don't necessarily agree with you on everything. And that's something that they have not done. And it's not happening. And it's showing, because if you look at how much they've raised, the state Republican Party versus the state Democratic Party, the state Republican Party is completely broke. They are just broke. They've raised 2% of the funds of the Democrats, which means that's how effective they are in tapping into the voters and getting support. Dave Reichert also has another problem.
And the brand sucks. Just to speak to what would appeal to me as a more centrist voter that leans left. So that's where I'm at. And probably the reason I lean left right now is because of the whole MAGA movement. That forces me by default to lean left. So to appeal to me, first of all, you're not going to mention Donald Trump's name, or you're going to say he sucks. Like, one of those two would work. But anything that smells like cozying up, no bueno. The other thing is, again, the social issues. You can have whatever opinion you want, but the second you convince me you're going to start alienating minorities or harming people who are vulnerable, I'm done. I'm not interested. So the pathway to a voter like me is you talk about crime and you talk about economic issues that are severely impacting us from the Jay Inslee administration. If you do that, you might win if you avoid the other things. But Richard, that's not how they think. So they alienate people like me, and either I won't vote or I'll hold my nose or whatever. But as far as a race like that goes, I'm not impressed. And I'm not impressed by how the Dave Reichert campaign evolved in especially the last couple of months. I'm just not impressed by it. It could have been so much better and so much more, and it wasn't. So he's going to lose.
All right. I predict Jamie Herrera Butler is going to win. I think she's getting.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah. I think she's appealed to the right people, and she's doing the right things as far as focusing on the right issues. If you look at her campaign website and all the things she's campaigning about, it's entirely absorbed in how the Commissioner of Public Lands impacts you. She doesn't veer off from that. She doesn't talk about social issues at all because they're not important in her race.
No, she
And
essentially is going to de facto run the Department of Natural Resources and some other agencies. And her website points wonderfully to how she would do that. She also has the name recognition. She has people, she's on people like my radar because, again, we don't have to belabor the point, but she, I think, took a courageous stand on a very, very challenging problem at the end of the last presidential election. So, yeah, I'm going to vote for her. And I'm not ashamed to say it. There's probably some Democrats who are going to think I suck or something. That's fine. They probably already did.
right, yeah,
But she's one of the few statewide candidates I'm enthusiastic about.
yeah. Well, I'm still enthusiastic about Dave Reichert. I agree that some of the things in the campaign were ill-advised, but I also
To say the
know
least.
the wall he is in, because if the Republicans are very good, where if you step out just a little bit, they'll just abandon you, and then you are screwed.
Yeah, I
Uh,
get that, and that's the downside of a two-party system, right? It becomes
Sonny Bird is
a
convincing
binary
people to write him
choice.
in.
You're forced to the fringes, and then you're screwed if you don't go along with the status quo. So I'm empathetic to that. I've even felt it personally when I've had people try to convince me to run for, um, office before. Is like I don't. You're not going to like me very much because I'm not going to be a very good Democrat or Republican. I'm, but it is the problem of having this dual political system is we run into this and we alienate the people who could do the most effective change who are in the middle, and who are people of good conscience and good follow through, and we don't have that in our body politic anymore. It
Yeah,
sucks.
I mean, it is tough. It is tough. I mean, I have begun, and I'm very proud of this. I have begun to be able to reach out to Democrats locally because our national politics is not everything we are.
No, I
You
saw that
know,
in you, Richard. A few years ago, you showed up to the first Pride event on Freedom Park and on Camano Island. You were the only Republican who opened a booth there, and that was, to me, it was like, okay, that you that couldn't have been popular on the Island County Republican Facebook page.
it
So,
was
so
not,
kudos to you for
but
doing something right.
it was actually the best event that I went to, as far
Yep.
as and I hope Republicans will take note. You don't have to. You have to get out of your comfort zone, or you will lose, because your comfort zone is 43% of the vote.
Yep.
And it's just the truth. If you do not get out of your comfort zone, you're going to lose.
Yep.
So
For sure.
one of the reasons I went there, and I knew being a Republican, I was a little nervous. So I knew there was going to be some people there who adamantly did not want to see an R anywhere near their event. Although they were actually very nice to me. So I was surprised there. And then I got to meet voters who were not going to vote for me. And then after talking to them, I got a few of them to support the campaign. Now, I could have just gone to another event that was more centered where right-wing people were, but how many votes would I have gained from that? Zero. They're already voting for you.
Maybe you ought to talk with Dave Reichert.
Yeah. So, and let's just pretend for a minute Jamie Herrera Butler did not vote to impeach Trump. Let's just take that off. What she's doing in her campaign is smart. She is going outside of normal Republican venues to appeal to people that normally wouldn't vote that way. And she's succeeding. I mean, she got the Seattle Times endorsement, for crying out loud. So I think what Jamie Herrera Butler's doing, very similar to how Kim Wyman used to run her campaigns.
Yes, another very, very great Republican candidate in Washington State.
It is the recipe to win. And winning can happen. And I'll tell you what, if Republicans do start finding that out and start winning, and they do a good job, which I believe they could. I believe they could do a lot of good for the economy. They would certainly do well with the police. I think a lot of the problems that we have right now would stop coming up. Like we wouldn't have a new tax every 25 minutes. And I think voters might turn around and be like, okay, wasn't a complete disaster. And then maybe you can be a little bit more in the center as opposed to having to go a little bit to the left. But until you start winning, you're not proving anything to anyone except that you're a loser.
I almost feel, Richard, that the state Republican Party is allergic to winning. They might actually hate it. I think they hate it, actually. I'm going to go with it.
Well, I think their fear is that if we get elected to something, then we're responsible. I mean, I think they've gotten used to and enjoy just hating on the current party that's in power. because the Republicans
It's
can
kind of like
honestly say right now,
they're the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving who just wants to bitch and complain about everything, not do anything to make it better. And so when you're actually elected, you are charged with the responsibility of being accountable and making things better. And not everyone will like you. Well, that doesn't comport to their way of thinking. So it's just more fun to bitch and complain in the corner and drool in front of the curtains.
so my advice to Republicans, and I am a Republican, everybody knows, it's not a secret. I vote
Definitely not a
Republican.
secret.
I vote Republican. I support Republicans, but I do encourage them to get out of their comfort zone, stop running further and further and further to the right because you're already losing. Find common ground, and we do have a lot of common ground with enough Democrat voters to win.
There you go.
If we focus
There's
on the police issues, like
magical
you
ticket.
said, yeah, if you focus on the police issues, because Democrats don't like crime any more than we do. We can all agree we
I
hate
abhor it.
seeing.
It's gone terribly.
We can all agree that we hate seeing the spread of fentanyl all over our streets. Republicans and Democrats have suffered personally from that by losing a friend or a colleague.
Right.
We all want small businesses to succeed and stop being choked out. We all want to see we want to keep more of our own money. I think everyone feels that we're probably being taxed enough. If you focus on those issues, which are Republican issues, you'll win. You'll win every argument. I have never seen a Republican argue with a Democrat about tax issues or the police and lose. Where they lose is they start jumping into transgender issues, or they start jumping into abortion, or they jump into the social issues that are not popular in the state.
Trump, that'd be another one.
And then Trump. And it's okay to support Trump if that's your guy, but you have to run your own race. You have to run your own race. You have to be your own person. You can't just be a carbon copy of a presidential candidate who's going to lose.
Yeah, I agree. If I was a Republican running for a statewide office of state and I was inclined to vote for Trump, which I don't, you couldn't pay me enough. But at any rate, if that was the case, I'd never bring it up. I wouldn't share it with anybody, not even my best friend. I wouldn't risk it because the state's going to vote close to 60% in favor of the Democratic candidate. So it's just a loser all around. I don't understand why they do it. I don't know. I don't get the cult surrounding this at all. So it's not a winning strategy, and that's fine. They don't like to win, so I guess they'll just keep on doing what they're doing.
At least not in this state, it isn't. In Oklahoma, it's a winning strategy. Like,
sure. In Oklahoma, it'd be
wild. Yeah,
right. In Oklahoma, if it was me running, I would leave any of my Democratic ideologies to the side, and I'd race to the center. And again, it'd be the inverse of the advice I'm offering to the Republican Party that they won't listen to. So, at any rate,
and I guarantee you,
statewide offices covered.
Yeah, there are Democrats in Oklahoma who are having the same come to Jesus conversation that Republicans need to have here.
I'm sure they're.
Don't bring up Kamala. Are you crazy? So you've got to read the room, is what I'm saying. You got to read the room. All right. So you're right. We've covered the statewide stuff. Now we're going to go into predictions on the federal election. So we just talked about Kamala and Trump. What is your prediction for that race on who's going to win?
This is disappointing to me. I certainly was happy when Joe Biden dropped out. I think there's been some good things he did and some not amazing things too. I think he far surpassed his time as far as being in that race, and I was surprised he ran for re-election to begin with. So it appears Kamala Harris was the heir apparent. She, as far as candidates go in my life, she's not my first choice. I am voting for her, and it's not. A lot of it has to do with just a never Trump sort of attitude I have. So I just view him as such a threat that I, far more than I would Kamala on some issues that I don't agree with her on. But I am voting for her. Now, me voting for her in Washington State doesn't mean she's going to win the national election at their electoral college, right? Not at all. So it's going to come down to 7 states you and I have talked about. And you can list them in a second. But at any rate, I do predict that Donald Trump's going to win. Vegas odds are pointed that way. And all the Real Clear Politics, no toss-ups are pointed that way. I think he's going to get close to, if not more than the 300 electoral votes, which shocking to me. I don't understand how, but I do think that's going to be the case, unfortunately. So
I can totally
yeah,
understand how. You want me to tell you how?
well, you can tell me
So
why you think so.
yeah, no,
It may not
I
comport
think
with my logic, but
well, what's
go ahead.
happened with the economy since Biden has taken office is inflation has gone out of control. His exit from Afghanistan was just overwhelming incompetence.
But that was started by Trump. It was shit. The last month of our placement in Afghanistan or withdrawal was shit. I won't argue with that. But it was started by Trump. Trump was the one that cut the deal with the Taliban. Like
Well, yes,
that's
and so no, pulling out of Afghanistan wasn't necessarily the issue. The issue was how it was done. We left billions of dollars of our military equipment for the Taliban to take. We should have at least
I
blown it
agree.
up. If we weren't going to
I
take it, we
agree with
should have
that.
destroyed
Unfortunately, you're right about all that, but the stage was set by Donald Trump, and I can't put all the blame on him because the way the Biden administration handled it was total crap. But
Yeah.
interesting to me that the United States government, the same party of Ronald Reagan, would be negotiating with the Taliban. That shocked me from the onset.
Well, so Trump is a different kind of person. So
To say the least.
The negotiation was he wanted Americans to stop dying, and he planned on pulling out. We eventually determined the Taliban's not going anywhere. We could have gotten rid of the Taliban, but in order to do it, we would have had to butcher like 20% of the Afghan population, which no American would have supported. And so we realized the Taliban's not going anywhere. So what the deal he wanted to make was, you will never again support any Al Qaeda agents, which they broke.
No way. The Taliban didn't keep their promise.
But
no,
the story has a happy ending. And he wanted no more Americans to die, and that was his rule. And then he showed the Taliban leader a picture of his house and explained, "I'm going to basically, I'll murder you if you break this deal."
Yeah, there's some of the like kind of like when Trump took out the Iranian general, that he even a broken clock's right a couple times a day. So I never was too mad at Trump for indicating a little bit of strength through power. But again, the whole way that exit from Afghanistan started was bizarre. And I don't mean to derail you from all the reasons you were telling me Biden sucks. So continue with that.
And then the other issue for Biden is, and this one may not be his fault much at all, was we now have a big war in Russia and Ukraine. Some people blame Biden, fair or not, for showing weakness. I mean, let's be honest. You and me, we're just going to be real with each other. I'll admit that Trump does bombastic stuff, and sometimes he says things he shouldn't say, which are awful. So,
yeah.
You have to admit that Biden looked the entire time like he had no idea what the hell was going on.
Yeah, he kind of did. I kind of agree with you on both counts, unfortunately. In this case, where we're going to commit so much U.S. resources to a foreign war, that at the point we decide we have to do that, we kind of have to win. So Biden slow-rolled a lot of, even before the Republicans took over the House, he slow-rolled a lot of that aid. There could have been F-16 training could have started immediately. ATACMS missiles could have been handed over immediately. There could have been things that could have pushed the Russians out of Ukraine, or even allowed them to engage the rear mobilization of the Russian troops on Russian soil, which I completely support. No one's telling Russia they can't bomb Ukraine. So I don't understand why Ukraine can't respond in kind to military targets in Russia. I never understood why that was hamstrung. So all it created for us was more death, more money, longevity of the war, to the point where it's probably going to come down to who wins the election is how that war is going to largely resolve itself. And I think that's unfortunate. So I've always been pissed off at the Biden administration that they didn't fiercely defend Ukraine with more than rhetoric. And, we are Ukraine's biggest benefactor. We always have been. So I can't say they didn't. But that war should have been fought to one from the beginning. And I don't believe it was.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that Russia went in the first place was because they believed Biden to be weak and incompetent. And whether
that may have been the calculus.
Vladimir Putin will take advantage of you if he can.
Sure.
And if he feels like there's weakness, he will do it. He is very much a narcissistic personality. Maybe
that explains why he gravitates so much to Trump.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. The advantage of having a Trump is Vladimir Putin knows if I upset this guy, reason won't work anymore. He'll just try to kill me.
Yeah, I don't know
Because Trump is
if Putin believes that, or he just believes Trump is so unpredictable he can't even take a position on it. So he just held the status quo as far as Crimea and parts of the eastern Donetsk area,
that was
Luhansk
something
area, whatever.
that was an
It was a
advantage that
frozen
Reagan had too.
conflict for the entire Trump administration. So
Yeah.
you may not be wrong, Richard, but Trump's unpredictable, and maybe that's part of his occasional foreign policy success. I also think that I can't rule out whatever type of leverage that the Russians had over Trump as well. That's been rumored
come
all over the
on.
place. There's entire
I know that
FBI
was rumored.
investigation surrounding it.
That was proven
I
false,
can't.
though.
I don't think it was
That
proven
was
false. I think it was proven inconclusive, and it wasn't politically tenable to push any further. So I will agree to disagree. I don't know to the extent that went. I do know that the Russians, including that Prigozhin guy, spent a lot of money backing Trump, a lot of influence on social media and other things. And I think the Russians have always been pulling for Trump, and that doesn't make me happy.
Yeah, and the Chinese sometimes pull for Democrats. Foreign
two
powers
countries that I have any two countries I could pick not to have involved in our elections whatsoever, that'd be those two.
Maybe those two. Maybe Iran. Throw that
Absolutely.
in there. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's coming up, but that's what's on people's minds right now. And I think the biggest issue that we are having right now and it's the biggest issue in every election. How's the economy doing? And the economy is not seen to be doing well. And that is why Trump has a chance.
Well, I think the economy is perceived as not doing well. Inflation obviously jumped, but again, some of this fire was lit during the pandemic, during Trump's administration. And at the time Trump signed it, the largest spending bill in history was in 2021.
Yep.
So do Republicans take credit for that ever? Do I ever hear Republicans saying, hey, my guy signed the largest spending bill in history?
Do you know why you're never going to hear it? And you know why they don't? Because Republicans were pushing for there to be no restrictions whatsoever. This whole COVID thing it's an overreaction. And Trump started out that way. And then he realized that wasn't politically smart. A little bit too late for his campaign. And then, but yeah, COVID was a wild time.
COVID was wild, but no, I agree with you. The inflation that spiraled, especially a year and a half ago or whatever, when it kind of peaked under Biden, was scary. Certainly was to a middle range consumer. That's not ever what you want to see. He never really comes off as somebody who's in charge or in command of any particular issue. But the economy right now is overperforming expectations. So it's hard for me to say the entire thing was just a row. It's weird. It's unprecedented to have high inflation, super high employment. These things normally don't go together. Super high commodity prices, gold, silver, oil, everything through the roof. Like these are not things that usually run together. The economy is not operating in a way any of us are familiar with, and that makes it really easy for a populist like Trump to come in and say it's all fucked. And I don't think it's all fucked. I think there are problems with it, and he continually ceases to amaze me about what he'll say and what he'll do. This is the guy who said, "We love the undereducated. We love blah blah blah," and I truly think he means it. And I honestly think if Trump ever saw the Democratic Party as his means to power, he would have gone through that as well. Trump is an echo chamber. He reinforces everything about the worst in all of us, and so I'll never vote for him.
I don't necessarily agree, but it's okay. I don't think he's the worst thing since sliced bread. I think we have had worse presidents.
I think he's a complete existential threat to our republic, and that doesn't mean I ever wished him dead or anything. But I think he is.
The Republic
will
be fine. I think the Republic will survive.
I sure hope so, Richard. I sure hope so.
We've survived a civil war. I think we could survive an election not going the way a lot of people want.
And that's a fair point, but
yeah. So what you did predict he is going to win, though.
I do
So
predict he's going to win, and I
let's
pray that it will go. What you're saying is we'll be fine. So,
yeah. So
his rhetoric sometimes far outpaces his execution, but not always. When he waltzed into office the last time, I was shocked that one of the first things he did was start um, deporting people who had been here since they were children. Of all the people you could deport, if that's what you're going to do, and that's what you were elected to do, then I guess that's going to happen. But people who were brought here as 1 and 2 year old children have contributed to the taxes in this country, have contributed positively to the culture, have never been sent to their home country. Those are the people you're going to round up and ship out. That to me was nuts. It was cruel. It was disgusting.
well, to be fair, it wasn't the only people who were shipped out.
No,
He
it
did
wasn't
ship
the
out a
only
lot of new
people, but
drugs.
those people
Yeah.
should never have been included in that. Congress should have cut a deal. The president should have put them on the, not even on the list to deport. I was shocked at that. And he's so cruel in his language, too. When he was running for office the first time, to speak the way he did about John McCain, to speak the way he did about so many other people who have far more character and honor than he does, was appalling to me. And I could never get behind that. So, in case you were
So
wondering,
his
I'm not a fan
rhetoric,
of Donald Trump.
his rhetoric is definitely one of the reasons he has such a hard time. I think he'd win this
Right.
race in a landslide if he had control over the way he talks. This race, it would be over right now. It'd be over right now.
I tend to agree with you, but he doesn't.
So,
He's out of control, and it was really interesting to me at the tail end of his last tenure in office. It took a bunch of generals putting a memo together saying, do not follow any of his orders should he say to do whatever. That's kind of scary when you think about it.
yes, but to be fair, he didn't do whatever. He never gave any of those orders. So,
Because he was hamstrung by the people who could have carried it out, and they did that preemptively to keep him from doing it.
Maybe I hesitate to judge anyone off anything he didn't do. So
okay, that's fair. I mean, that is fair. We don't make the world a better place usually when we do that, but in his case, he holds the high honor of perhaps an ounce of prevention in my mind. But I'll give you that.
But yeah, so let's go over the main battleground states, and then we'll go over two that I think need to be kept an eye on. So Michigan, who do you think's going to win it?
That one's going to be close. The polling now is aimed in his favor. I don't know if I actually believe it because the folks who are winning the statewide offices are still showing up blue. I'm going to put that slightly in Kamala's category.
Okay, so Kamala. I'm going to agree. I think Kamala gets Michigan. What the heck? This pen is not working with me. All right. So Wisconsin. Who do you think's going to win that one?
That's going to be tough too. Polling was really close in the last two elections. I believe both of them were Democratic wins. I'm gonna lean that way again, but not as much as Michigan. I think this is going to be in that whole 12,000 vote.
Trump won Wisconsin against Hillary, and then Biden won it by 10,000 votes. So
I stand corrected. I do think Kamala will win, and it'll be barely.
Okay, I will. So here's me and you. By the way, whoever is closest wins lunch. That's the agreement we made. So
okay.
You say we both agree on Michigan for Kamala. I will say Trump for Wisconsin.
Okay.
So let's see here. How about Pennsylvania?
I think that's going to go Trump. The polling's really strong. The governor is, doing weird stuff. I think if Bob Casey's running around thinking Trump's going to win, he's probably got better internal polling than any national campaign would. So I tend to think that's going Trump.
Yeah, and I think Shapiro, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, really feels slighted by Kamala because he was discounted largely because of his support for Israel. And he believes that Kamala may not be as pro-Israel as others. So I think he's hamstringing her campaign, which happens. Internal problems in parties happen, people. But yeah, I agree.
Yep,
So
sure.
Pennsylvania is going to probably be Trump. All right, Nevada.
That I think is going to be Kamala Harris, and by a very small margin.
You know what? I'm going to go Trump on that one. I think Trump picks up
Hard to see
Nevada.
it. Hard to see it in my mind, but
Well, then maybe you got lunch.
we'll see. We'll see.
So let's see here. But you say Kamala.
I say
That's
Kamala.
where I
Yeah,
went.
for sure.
Here we go. Oh, another pen. Yay. It's tired of that
Good.
one. All
But
right.
glad you're keeping track of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, how else am I going to know if I won? Uh, so, um, Arizona.
I think that's going for Trump, my friend.
I agree. I definitely agree. North Carolina.
I don't think Carrie Lake's going to win, though. FYI, just as an asterisk, because I want to be a pain in the ass.
I
She's going
I
to
also
lose.
agree. I also agree.
Yep.
How about North Carolina?
I think Trump's going to win in North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think the Republicans going to win for governor there either. You know, God, what a freaking disaster.
Big time. But
now you can't really blame anyone for that because nobody knew. I mean, like, until it was too late. He seems like a nice guy when you talk to him. He talks really well. He seems very professional. Then you find out he's on weird sites declaring himself a black Nazi or whatever.
yeah, that was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
was.
His I will call it flip flopping on the transgender issue without getting to the point where I'm going to put this in NC-17 for you, Richard. So we'll leave it at
that. All right, Georgia.
Oh man, Georgia has record turnout. I am having a hard time imagining Trump making enough inroads in the African American community to overcome what I think is going to be a victory for Kamala.
Okay, so Kamala.
And I think it's going to be razor thin. Again, I don't know 11,339 or whatever votes razor thin, but I think it's going to be decided by less than 100,000 ballots.
Okay. Now, another state that I think might be worth looking at. Now, there's two states that I want to look at on election night that we're pretty confident are going to go to Kamala. One that I want to take a look at as a maybe not is Virginia, because Virginia's been different lately. They've got a Republican governor. They've been not so nice to the Democratic legislature recently. So I will say that that's going to go to Kamala. Will you agree?
I will, and I think it's going to be because of suburban women. For the same reason Biden won.
And I will also say the same about New Hampshire going to Kamala.
I would agree with that too.
But what I would really want to take a look at is how quickly she wins them. If Virginia, New Hampshire aren't declared until late into the night, she's going to have a rough night. If they're declared right away, he might have a rough night. So let's see. With your prediction on the battleground states, let's see where we're at.
My predictions come with a lot of wishful thinking, because I already told you I think he might pull 300 or more electoral votes. So that doesn't necessarily follow the calculus I just gave you on the individual swing states.
All right. Well, let's see where we are at. All right. Based off what you said, Kamala, with the individual swing states, Kamala wins 273 electoral votes and wins the race.
Fingers crossed.
So, based off what I said, what did we disagree on? We disagreed on this one and this one. I hold him at 297.
Okay,
so with
you and I appear to think that this is going to be based on extremely narrow electoral college margin. So I guess it'll
Yes.
be we'll have to let your viewers, Richard, know who won lunch and where that was and how much we drank.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I'll tell you what. I think the person who loses will probably get the most alcohol. Uh, so, but yeah, no, I think 297. It looks like you have her at 273, which is real close. That just means you're
It's
wrong
super
about one
close.
state and it's over. Both of them are
Yeah.
close. So I
Yeah.
don't know. All right.
We'll see.
We will see what happens. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And on election day, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live. That's already been put out. It's been put out for a couple of weeks now. And we're going to cover the election locally. We're going to cover the statewide elections, and we're going to obviously pay attention to the federal elections. I'm not going to do too much work on those because somebody else will tell me who won. But we'll definitely mention it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I will chat with you soon, and we'll see who's closer.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Richard. Again, you do a really good job drawing from people from all sides of the equation here to speak with you. So I do appreciate that a lot about you. You're a great guy. So thanks for letting me speak my piece.
Oh, well, thank you. Not a problem.
All right.
And you get to speak him again on November 5th.
We'll see how that shapes out. I'll look forward to it.
All righty. Sounds good. I'll
All right.
talk to you.